Right, so immigration. The Tories have been kicking migrants solidly for years now. One of the big Brexit pros they sold us was about taking back control, of course, wasn't it? How has that been working out? Yes, indeed. How has that been working out? Well, migration has trebled since Brexit was done, 200,000 cases a year, then to over 600,000 now. Leading cause of that? The elephant in the room? There's no returns policy negotiated with the EU as part of that Brexit deal, over and ready as Boris Johnson sold it to us. Complete turkey twizzler as it's turned out, because he cut corners. His laziness knows no bounds, and the failure to negotiate that returns policy is the key point. Where before we took back control, we could share the load of asylum seekers and refugees amongst other EU countries, regardless of which border they landed on. Now that we have control, though, of course, we can no longer do that. Control, freedom. Successful asylum applicants must now be housed here as a result of that, which brings us on to Suella Braverman's deportation plans to Rwanda. Now, she could have negotiated a returns policy instead. Other non-EU countries like Switzerland, like Turkey, have returns policy deals with the EU, recognising the global crisis it is. This part of the world pulling together within the EU or not. But with the Tories electorally on their backsides, having screwed up health, screwed up the economy, screwed up Brexit, screwed up everything, frankly, over the last 13 years, the only thing they've got left in their great big bag of dirty tactics is to convince us, the electorate, to punch ourselves in the face once again come the next election by voting for them once more. And to do that, they've been stoking up division and hatred. It's culture war time. So it's all deportations. It's all stop the boat, stop the boat, stop the boats. It's Rwanda. It's threatening to tear up the Human Rights Act, which protects all of us as well. Meanwhile, as they clamp down on things like protest, refuse to listen to people on strike, unable to make ends meet, simply for doing their jobs, inflation on food impacting the poorest most severely and not coming down, even as headline inflation figures do, thanks to wage rises, incidentally, the Tories are getting more and more people's backs up as even their little migrant bashing culture war looks set to derail them. Oh, and there's all those pesky scandals that keep cropping up too. The immigration situation as it stands thanks entirely to Tory incompetence, and that is one of increased small boats coming here, knowing they'll have to be housed here in the UK, avoiding the uncertainty of being settled elsewhere as a returns policy would have on being. Foreign workers who used to come and support our NHS and pick our crops have gone, taking their skills with them, which cannot be replaced quickly. Vacancies left cannot be filled. And where the NHS is concerned, this is entirely what the Tories want. Still, the idiot in charge of health thinks refusing to negotiate with striking staff over safety concerns is the way to go to get them back to work. He needs to go fast. His obsession with beating them is detrimental to the health of the whole country. They don't really care, though. They want the NHS to die on its backside, of course. But that's not the point, and that's not what they're trying to sell us. That's not the message they're trying to get across through Steve Barclay, who was on the media rounds again this morning, being a complete flaming idiot. But where crops and the likes are concerned, it plays into that food inflation where the supply and demand balance gets screwed up. The less there is of something, the more it costs. Sunak is now advertising abroad for teachers. This shitfest just gets worse and worse. Teachers here are on strike too. Many have left the profession because of poor paying conditions. How about you fix that? Or is that admitting defeat? Why is it that you purport to serve the country and its people, yet see every interaction with us as some kind of a battle you as government have to win over us? Nobody's winning. So immigration is a huge economic issue through a multitude of different avenues. And although I focused on that somewhat in order to lay the groundwork for where Labour are going with this now, which is the point of this video, of course, if you were wondering if I was ever going to get to the point, that completely omits the cultural benefits decades of multiculturalism has had on this country. Food from curries to fish and chips were brought here by others. Religious diversity, arts diversity, the UK's reputation as a welcoming place for others from across the Commonwealth, as we've had all across numerous decades now, from the Windrush generation and more, the very things the families of people like Rishi Sunak, like Suella Braverman, like Priti Patel benefited directly from. But now they're the leading lights in slamming the door in the faces of other families like their own is truly sick and twisted. They are truly sick and twisted people to think as they do. So the question has to be asked, how much more sick and twisted must you be to want that to carry on and to be done even harder and even faster? And although you might think, perhaps I'm about to start talking about Reform UK here, if we're talking about going even further to the right, I'm not. I'm talking about Keir Starmer's bastardised iteration still calling itself a Labour Party when its funding is increasingly coming from Tory-type millionaires and billionaires than working-class people via trade union dues. Trade unions who really need to start thinking a lot harder now about why they are funding this sham of a party. Starmer has this weekend yet again written in the Murdoch Sun, because of course he has, saying immigration needs to go down, just as Suella Braverman keeps saying. But where Braverman and the Tories consistently fail on this by not taking the obvious remedial action with the EU, that they're batshit backbench Brexit obsessive squealing like stuck pigs over any such notion, no doubt, being put across the table of dealing with the dreaded European Union and coming to some sort of agreement with them. Labour reckons they'd succeed. Have I read the article in the Sun? Have I? Hell, nothing on God's green earth will possess me to read an article in that hateful rag. I refuse to, point blank. But Starmer's tweet about the article, always proud to show creepy Uncle Rupert he's here to do his bidding. In 2020, it should be noted, Starmer said, the Labour Party has been a bit scared of making the positive case for immigration for quite a number of years, and I think we need to turn that around. Well, Labour's DWP even, Shadow Minister Jonathan Ashworth, a man with all the practical value of an ashtray on a motorbike, got asked to make the positive case for immigration on Laura Kuenssberg's Sunday morning word garbage and came out with, we've got 1.3 million people unemployed. We've got 700,000 young people not in work, not in education or training. We've got hundreds of thousands of people who are sick or older workers over 50 who say if they were given support, they would try to work. And you know what? Only 1 in 10 sick or disabled people out of work are older workers and get any support from the system. That is ridiculous. We have to reform that, and ministers cannot even tell you how many unemployed people claim universal credit are accessing any training. They don't have any figures on that. That is hopeless. You can reform this system now to help people move into work. Nice of him to answer a question he wasn't even asked, isn't it? That's the immediate reaction you would have to that word salad of an answer. Labour also said they would scrap universal credit, John, but now aren't you forgetting to mention that one? Actually, Ashworth's answer isn't quite as ignorant of Kuenssberg's question as it first appears, because the Department for Work and Pensions run by him will see older people and sick people forced into work to replace migrant workers. That's what he's actually getting at there. He's accusing the Tories of finding too many people unfit for work, despite the toll the Tories' pandemic incompetence has wrought on the health of so many. We've been here before under the Tories, where excess deaths of people found wrongly fit for work have been flagged up in no fewer than 7 UN reports, directly showing people being forced into work causes excess deaths. Ashworth is setting himself up to be the next Ian Duncan Smith. But immigration, let's come back onto that. Let's keep the focus on it. We're digressing a bit, aren't we? But it's relevant. I think it's relevant. But anyway, let's get back to the point. This week, Suella Braverman struck again in her obsession with migration numbers by rushing out curbs on international students being able to bring their families with them. Now, students coming here to study, paying all the way, are net contributors to our economy. It's a no-brainer. They are paying money to come here and study. We're making money out of them coming here to do so. Surely that's a good thing. If in further education, these people may well be married. They're going to be typically older. They may well already have children, have families, would not wish to be separated from them. And surely in a sensible, right-thinking country, you wouldn't expect them to be separated. They're coming here to study. They're coming here to benefit us, benefit our economy. But are they any more likely only going to be here for a finite span of time as well? They're not going to be here forever. Why would they? They're going to come here, they're going to study, they're going to get the skills, get the qualifications here, and then go home and use them. We will have made money out of the fact they've been here. They're not going to stay here forever. Some might, depends what they're studying. But most, on the whole, do not. They go home again. The fact children will be barred from coming here makes this an inherently misogynistic policy as well. It's anti-migrant because it doesn't actually deal with high permanent migration. It disproportionately affects students from certain countries who are known to be more likely to have such families at a younger age, typically, and have independence too. It's a fudge policy. It's mean. It's cruel. It's just nasty. It's designed entirely to reduce numbers so that the government can say, look, we've reduced things, but when more and more people are coming here, refugees, asylum seekers, on the boats, with more people on them for the aforementioned reasons that I started with at the beginning, that Boris Johnson's fudge of a Brexit deal solved nothing. These changes to migration are just arbitrary, they're nasty, they're for the numbers, but they don't come into effect until January next year. So Where's Labour coming on this then? Well, let's get to the point. This video is supposed to be about Labour, isn't it? So come on, Labour. Where's Labour coming in? Well, Welsh Windbag 2.0, Stephen Kinnock, he loved this, but he had his own recommendations to add to the Tories. He said, in response to this policy being pushed, the number of dependents joining students in the UK since 2018 creates significant challenges. And that the enforcement measures that are coming in are long overdue, and therefore the leader of the opposition has already made clear, this is Keir Starmer, of course, as indeed our entire front bench, because they're all nodding dogs effectively, that we do not oppose these changes for master's students. Keep that one in mind. But as usual, the government has failed to deliver an impact on these new rules and has left many of the details very vague. How many people will this affect, both in terms of students and dependents? What will the actual impact be on the numbers? The ONS defines an immigrant as someone who has been here for more than a year, or who has come in for more than a year, yet master's students are typically here for less than a year. As I said, they're not going to be here permanently. But what is clear is that dependents of students are only a fraction of the story here. In their 2019 manifesto, the Conservatives acknowledged that the Brexit vote was a bid to take back control of immigration. Yet since then, net migration has skyrocketed from 226,000 to 500,000, which is a record high even if you exclude Ukrainians and Hong Kongers. And the number of work visas has increased by 95%, a staggering figure. We're clear why this has happened. It's because for 13 years, the Conservatives have failed to train up Britain's homegrown talent to fill the million vacancies we have, and because of a 6 million people NHS waiting list in England alone, most of whom wish to return to the workforce. We want and expect net immigration to reduce. Right, windbag interlude over. So Kinnock welcomes this policy of barring families of migrant students coming here. Keir Starmer signs off on it, and the whole front bench of the Labour Party is in agreement with it. But it doesn't go far enough for Labour, because the Tories made master's students an exception to their legislation, notably those students on research programmes, research-led master's courses, or doing PhDs, the most expensive courses, often the shortest, as Kinnock acknowledged. But still it wasn't enough for Labour. Kinnock also made much the same arguments as Ashworth has today. The emphasis on getting long-term sick, the disabled and older workers back into the workplace. So far, Labour's answer to reduce those NHS waiting lists without bringing in migrant work involved bringing in the private sector, whose donations Starmer and his health minion Wes Streeting have greedily accepted. Training people here, although welcome, needs investment, needs attractive packages to do so, needs above all else time, and the private sector can't provide that. If Labour don't wake up to the realisation they need to bring migrant health workers back in to bring down waiting lists now, then they're idiots, and sticking arbitrary figures on net migration is not going to solve any of the problems this country is currently facing. Private health provision will be both more expensive and insufficient. But hey, they've taken the donations. They've been bought and paid for, haven't they? Kinnock's overall message is that, yes, we like this, but as usual, you, the Tories, are not going hard enough. He's positioned Labour to the right of Sir Braverman on immigration, of all things, for God's sake. An absolutely insane take. But what do you expect from a party determined to out-Tory the Tories at every turn, chasing their voters to the detriment of anyone else? And after you've liked, shared, and subscribed to the channel, having appreciated the work that went into this one, having appreciated the tone that I've put across in it, which you've now arrived at the end of course, and are thinking, I quite like the cut of this chap's jib. I wonder what else he's come up with. I wonder what's next. You can avail yourself of this video recommendation here that I'm making to you, where a Starmer loyalist at Labour's highest table is now working for private health interests, just reinforcing much of what I've just told you here. Do check out my other content too, hundreds of videos to choose from, putting the boot into the blue Tories and the red Tories alike. New content coming daily, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers, folks.